What's going on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things. I'm here today with my good friend Mark King. Some of you guys may know him. If not, he's the founder of Kimbo. He made this thing come to life. So Mark's out here in Colorado visiting. We just had a really cold night last night, and I have my Sprinter van, but Mark, you didn't have a vehicle, so I was like, take my Kimbo. You made this thing. You designed it and all, so what did you think about staying in the Kimbo for your first time in a little while?
It was nice. It's toasty. It's cold out, really cold. And that little fireplace, we were able to dial it in and just get it perfect. And the loft stayed nice and warm. I shut the blinds and slept in late, so it was perfect.
I'm honestly a little bit jealous every time I see a Kimbo and I'm not in my own, so I just know how it feels and the warmth from the fireplace and everything. So I just wanted to bring you guys a quick video today about how these things actually came to be. Mark and I have kind of hit on it a little bit in the past, but we're gonna hop inside the camper and talk about the idea popping into your head up until the point that these campers are at right now.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Oh, it's so much warmer in here. It's so nice in here with that fire going.
Yeah.
So, how Kimbo became a thing. It was about 2013. You had Travax up and running, making wallets and other gear and things like that. Yesterday you told me a story which I had never heard before, so I know this probably isn't on video, but you told me a story about going out and camping with a buddy of yours.
Yeah.
So what happened with that?
So I was working to build Travax, get it up and running, and I was staying there a lot. So me and my friend Zach, we go up and we're like, let's get out of the town for a little while and go camp. So we get in my Tacoma and go drive off, and it ends up being pretty cold that night. We end up staying on the top of a mountain pass. We stay in the back of my Tacoma with sleeping bags. We wake up in the middle of the night and there's just mosquitoes biting our face. And
so you're laying in the bed of your Tacoma.
I don't even think we had sleeping pads or anything. I think we just had sleeping bags.
Just a sleeping bag, no cover over you, just a bag in the back of a bed of a truck.
Yeah, so we really wanted to get out of town. So that morning, I've got all these mosquito bites all over my face, and I'm just thinking, I've got to build something that could make it easier. Because when you go out and take that leap, go out and go camping, it's really therapeutic. It's nice. I mean, you do it all the time.
Yeah.
To be able to get away and go be in nature.
Yeah. And I haven't done it quite to the extent of just sleeping in the bed of a truck, but I've had my fair share of nights in ground tents. I have slept in the bed of my truck underneath like a tonneau cover and things like that. I still enjoy that. I'll still do that to this day, even though we have the luxury of something like a Kimbo now. It's just disconnecting, getting rid of the phone in your pocket, and just coming out and enjoying nature, how it really should be. So you have that experience camping, mosquitoes everywhere, and then that's when it kind of clicks for you. Maybe I should use my craftiness and create something more than a tent.
Yeah. So I made the first Kimbo out of wood, and it was at that time that I was living in a studio apartment. I didn't have much room for storage, so I made the first one. It was just a wooden frame, and it was kind of like a box, and it expanded upwards and became twice its height.
So it kind of popped up and then might have been like level with the cab of the truck?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the first night I took it out, it didn't have this pop-up mechanism installed. It was just kind of taking it out for a first go, and one of my family members had said, that thing looks like a coffin. So I'm there in the back of this, and it's compacted, and it really doesn't, it's not very fun to stay in. And in the middle of the night I'm thinking, they're right, this really feels like I'm sleeping in a coffin. So I get rid of that thing. I think I probably tossed it in the dump. And then I started to build one which was all aluminum.
You jumped straight from the wooden, like, very first prototype right to aluminum.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had learned how to weld aluminum back in high school.
Of course.
I used to work for somebody. We used to build electric cars.
Okay.
And so I had learned how to weld aluminum.
Yeah.
And so I started building a CAD model of a camper, but this time I'm kind of thinking, okay, I want more room, I want to be able to sit upright. And so that one was, that one, it wasn't that tall. It was probably, say, a foot over the cab,
Okay.
maybe even less.
And is that where you made the decision to go with like the slide-in kind of model
Yeah.
rather than just building it in the truck?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it had a slight overhang over the roof.
Okay.
And I take that one out. I'm thinking, all right, I'm set now. It's got a little kitchen area and storage, and it's got a nice bed, and I had a pop-up in the roof to be able to kind of open up for the view. I think that was the one I took to Yellowstone
Okay.
for the first time, and that was pretty cool. But the problem was it wasn't insulated, and so it was in the morning. It would kind of like radiate heat into the camper and cook me out of bed.
Yeah.
So then I'm thinking, so that model, I ended up giving that to somebody. It was kind of like a prototype. And then I'm beginning to build a little bit of traction, momentum. I've got some experiences of how much joy this kind of slide-in truck bed camper can bring. And then I start building kind of the first version with a kitchen and a shower.
I remember seeing like your early videos of that too. We were probably like acquaintances at the time because of my connection with Travax and everything. I remember seeing you had like a shower basically here, I believe. And I remember you had like 5-gallon buckets. You kind of had wood in there. It was way different from how you see a Kimbo camper sitting right now.
Yeah.
So that's between 2013 up until like probably 16-ish when you started making them kind of in the form factor that you see now. One thing that I know we've talked about in the past, but can you tell people where the design inspiration came from? Why does the Kimbo look the way that it does? Because it's very contrasting. Some people love it. Some people hate it. They think it's ugly.
Yeah.
But I would say that most people come to the interior and that's when they really fall in love with it.
Yeah.
So where did the design come from, like the angles and the outside, the aluminum and everything?
Well, the very first version of Kimbo was just aluminum sheeting. I was trying to keep it light, and so that aluminum sheeting, I had welded it all and it was triangulated. It was kind of the very first version, had that triangulated roof. The reason for that is so that you can have more space, because I backed into it accidentally, I'd say, because I had built that first one and it was just raw aluminum, and I'm thinking, okay, the next step is I've got to put insulation on the walls.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of one way of thinking about it. But the other way is that I built it in this fashion because I didn't want, in the Northwest, we get some nasty weather. And being able to put insulation directly up against the aluminum, the whole camper feels warmer, because you don't have these, what do you call them, stanchions, or these.
Yeah,
It would be like the equivalent of a 2x4 in a house.
An old like stick frame, how campers and RVs have kind of been built and are still built to this day, like a stick and tin type of materials.
And when you've got that, it gives the opportunity for heat and cold transfer through into the camper. And so when you step into a Kimbo, it feels different. It really does.
Yeah.
And it just feels warm and homey and cozy.
Yeah.
And that was when I first insulated one of the first prototypes. I kind of got in it. I'm like, there's something different about this. It feels different. I like this, and continued to kind of go with not having a frame. But in terms of the exterior and just the way that it looks corrugated on the outside, and the way that we buff the exterior, the reason for that is that I had actually lived in a trailer park to get Travax started, and I bought an Airstream. I had it sitting there parked, and one night my neighbor's tent, it was one of these pop-up kind of Costco show tents. They were using it for cover, and it blows over in the wind, and it puts this huge, 2.5 foot scratch in the side of my Airstream.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, how am I even going to fix this? Because it would be thousands of dollars to fix. I had already gotten a dent up in the top, and I'm just fuming from getting this big, huge scratch in my Airstream. I'm thinking, I want to build a camper that if you drive through the woods, or if it gets scratched, that the scratch will kind of fade in. And so then I went with this method of buffing the exterior so that scratches fade in and that they don't stand out. And so that you're not afraid to go, driving into the woods, and that if a branch scratches up against your camper, that it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, that's interesting because I take this thing in places where I probably shouldn't be. Like, there are a ton of scratches on the outside, but with the way that it's finished, you really don't notice them. And a lot of people ask, they're like, oh, can you shine that thing up like people polish an Airstream? You could, but for my functionality of it, I wouldn't even want to do that. And it's cool because you think of like Travax products, a wallet with leather and metal, it develops a patina, and that like use over time tells a story. The outside of the camper kind of does the same thing.
Yeah.
You can tell that it has been used, you can tell some stories with it, but it's not destroyed. Like, you have some scratches here and there, and that's just the life of taking a camper into places like we're in right now.
Yeah.
So did the influence of your experience with submarines, where did that come into play?
I remember being a kid on one of my first Tiger cruises. My father, he was the submarine captain he was the captain of the USS Alabama. And I'm so proud of my dad. He is an awesome person. Well, he was telling you yesterday, he's been on 5 submarines.
Yeah.
He's been the captain of 2 submarines.
I had the chance to meet Mark's dad, and I got to see kind of some of the subs he was on, hear a little bit about the backstory of it. He's enlisted for 27 years.
Yeah.
But really cool that you were able to experience that as a kid, and that's probably where you kind of got comfortable in spaces like this.
Yeah.
So you've been on a submarine when?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, back before, back when I was a kid, you were allowed to go on Tiger cruises. I don't know if you can now, but
I'm not sure either.
My dad is. I think the Tiger cruise that we were on, we were going from Subbase Bangor in Washington and about halfway to Hawaii, and then we turned around.
Whoa, that's crazy.
And so I'm a young kid, and I'm coming into this sub for the first time, and this is a huge nuclear submarine. It's got 24 nuclear missiles in it with hatches that open up on the top of it and torpedoes, and it's a billion-dollar submarine that my dad is the captain of, and 200 people are in this submarine. It's able to be self-sustained underwater. It's an incredible piece of equipment, and I come in as a kid and just see what my dad actually does for work, and I'm so inspired by it. And they pull down the periscope, and I get to look out of that, and I get to walk around and kind of explore. I maybe had a little bit more freedom because I was the captain's son. And I get so inspired by small spaces, and I get so inspired by multifunction.
Yeah.
They pack, I think, my dad is saying the galley, I guess, or the officers' quarters, my dad's saying, we can eat dinner there, but also there's a way of flipping the table or making the table into like a surgery, an area where you could do surgery too.
So all of that stuff that you experienced as a kid, it seems like it might have subconsciously went into the idea behind this. So you have something that can be completely self-sustaining. You have solar and water, you have propane and things like that. Multi-use, like this table that slides away, different levels of storing things.
Yeah.
So it's cool how that happened very early on, but then when you got into the process of making a product for yourself, it's like, oh, I've learned this stuff as a kid. I can kind of take that same functionality and that cool factor
Yeah.
and put it into something like the camper.
Yeah, it's like if I've got the challenge of how do I make this space self-sustained? How do I make it so that it has every aspect of self-survival that it would need? You know, with food and heat and refrigerator and you know and the solar panels and making everything efficient in such a way that it kind of continues to run itself. You were saying that you just leave this camper parked. You don't even plug it in and it charges itself.
Yeah, I mean, I have, I believe it's 200 watts on the roof, and with this battery system here, I leave the fridge running. Other than that, nothing else is drawing power when I'm not actually in the camper.
Yeah.
And it's completely self-contained. I have water in here, so when I want to go out into the mountains, I leave clothing and supplies and things like that in here all the time. All I have to do is hop in the truck and drive off. And I have everything I need, that's what I love about vehicles like this. I typically leave all of my camping vehicles in a state where a lot of people consider it like a bug out vehicle.
Yeah.
Like if something happens, I can get in my truck and leave whenever, and I'm self-sufficient. I've got food, I've got supplies, I got everything I need in this cool little cozy cabin in the back of a truck.
That's what this has always started as. You know, I had lived in a trailer park for 3 years, so I'm used to living small. And then some of the first Kimbo prototypes, I lived in that same trailer park. But that was kind of the testing grounds. It's like, all right, I have no home to rely on. It's like, I've just got this, and how do I make this more multifunctional? How do I make it more self-sustainable? How do I make it more comfortable? How do I make it feel like home?
Yeah.
And this Kimbo is an RV, it's a camper to take out camping, but it really started out as being a self-sustained house that you could take with you anywhere you go at whatever time that you wanted to go, and to be able to live.
So I like that you bring up the idea of it feeling like a home, because it's really hard to describe on video. Photos kind of do justice to an extent. It really piques people's interest when they see the layout of this. But what did you do after you had kind of the first prototype? What did you do to actually come up with ideas like the separation? Because I know you went to school and actually studied, was it interior design? Or you studied a few things to kind of understand separation in a small space to make it feel like there's an entryway, there's a living quarters, there's a bedroom, even though it's all open. So what did you do to kind of refine the actual design of it on the inside?
I think it's kind of like just viscerally and psychosomatically, when you walk into a gymnasium, it doesn't feel like home. But when you've got a home and it has different kind of ways of wandering through and exploring the space, that it's kind of got, that areas are cordoned off in order to have like a purpose. Mm-hmm. I think that was kind of really what I was going for, but I wanted to implement that element of separated spaces without the feeling of openness as well. So it's subtle. So it's like something like this. It wouldn't look like it has a purpose from the eyes of an RV manufacturer. It's like, well, why would you add that? Because it doesn't really do anything. But when you're in that space, just in a small way, it does have an element of influence in the way that it helps you kind of feel like cozy up in this space. But at the same time, it doesn't take away from the feeling of size when you're down here. Every RV has benches that sit directly across from each other, and it's like, why would you do that? It feels like an interview.
Yeah.
And how are you supposed to have a friend over when you both are sitting there staring at each other? It's awkward.
Yeah, it would be like if there was just another bench seat here, we would be having a conversation like this,
like 2 feet away from each other's faces.
Yeah, it's fine, but it's not as comfortable as this. We're kind of open, like we can kind of look around, we can get to the fridge and access things. This is just so much more comfortable.
Yeah.
It's more of like a relaxing environment as opposed to a traditional dinette that you would see in other slide-in campers or tow behinds.
Yeah. So that influences something as subtle as like the angle of the bench that I'm on right here. And
there's very subtle things like that. Even like the partition between the galley area and like the seating nook area, that doesn't really do anything, but it adds something to the space that's very hard to put into words. It provides separation, although it's really not separating anything.
Yeah.
It's just that visual and the feeling of the interior.
Yeah.
This is one of the main ones for me. When you climb up in bed, this could totally be open. I know this part in particular adds a little bit of structural integrity, but most of the structural integrity comes from what you were talking about, the design of the aluminum, the insulated panels of aluminum. It allows you to have more space in here and use it more efficiently.
Yeah. And one of my goals was like how long can 2 or 3 people be in this space and not want to leave?
Yeah.
And so I'd bring friends in, and it's like, all right, well, I think I remember, there were like 5 or 6 people that were in here, and half sitting in the kitchen and half sitting in the closet, and it was like nobody wanted to leave. And then I'm kind of thinking, okay, something's working.
I think one of my first experiences was I came up to visit you at Travax, and it might have been one of those early prototypes, but we went and got like tacos or burritos at a little shop, and then we came back and we sat in the Kimbo. It was you, me, and I think Ashley. We had the heater going, and we just kind of sat here, and I was just like in awe. I was like, wow, the feeling is just so hard to put into video, and you really have to see one for yourself.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit more from that, you have the prototype. Tell me about how it was getting this thing into production, where you were sourcing parts, you were figuring out a manufacturing schedule and ways to do things in order to create that very first unit that is probably still out on the road today. Someone out there owns Kimbo #1.
Yeah, I think it was, in some ways it was luck, and in some ways it was just having the right people. There was a guy who I was working with at the time, and he was working as hard as I was. I was sleeping in the shop at that point, and there's just hundreds upon hundreds of little details that you've got to get into place. And so we make that first production version, and once we finalize all the little details and it's ready to go, we were behind schedule, but the first buyer was gracious and gave us extra time. But when we step back and look at the completeness of this and how professional it looks, it kind of inspires us to the next generation of effort.
So you created that first production unit, and since then, I like how you guys take feedback from customers and kind of iterate and change little things, whether it's parts that you use like a fan or maybe the lights, changing things like a water faucet. You guys are kind of ever evolving this thing, and they're kind of getting better as time goes on. So where do you see Kimbo heading in the next year to 3 years to 5 years?
Yeah, I think the main thing is like Kimbo to me represents nimble, simple living. That mode of thought is the archetype of what all of this is built off of. And so what I want to make sure of is that Kimbo continues with the theme of modularity. I like the idea of that if something breaks, you don't have to tear half the camper apart to access it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is just like helping to like putting simple solutions in place and things that aren't gimmicky. And we've talked about this in the past. It's just like having these baskets or having these systems on the wall where you can mount. The more complexity we embed into the design, the more opportunity there is for things to break. Mm-hmm. And one of the most important things to me is that this camper can last long enough that you can pass it on. It can last long enough that you can rely on it. It can last long enough that you can trust it.
That's one of the things that really drew me to this originally was, for one, seeing it and feeling it and being able to experience it is just like, it's different than everything else. But also, you have the quality, the functionality, with the opportunity for repair, which not a lot of companies like to offer. No one really even says that. And you and I have talked about it a bunch. I've talked about it a lot in my own videos, but you are creating a great product, but you're also giving people the opportunity to buy the shell and take your own creativity and create a new galley. Or maybe you don't want a fridge and you want to build something yourself. Like, I think that's very, very cool, and it kind of attracts a certain type of customer. The average person who uses a Kimbo, I would say across the board, is a very unique person for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, you've seen, we were just looking at it yesterday, it's like in the Facebook group, this shell is an opportunity for somebody to become inspired in their own way and to create their own design, and for this to be theirs. And so we come up with this, I've come up with this design and this layout, and I like it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's ideal for other people. You can still buy a Kimbo that doesn't have all of this furniture, and outfitting it yourself almost makes it that much more fun to go out and adventure and know that you had influence on your home.
How does that make you feel as the creator, to see the thought and engineering that you put into it? How does it make you feel when you see someone take what you've done and go crazy on the interior and just make it like something that you've probably never envisioned yourself before?
I love it. Because this whole thing is about, Kimbo has never existed before. There's been truck bed campers, but this has never existed before. And that somebody could become inspired by the idea of this to the degree that they put their time, their effort, their money into making it their own, and they come up with something that's equally as awesome looking or more awesome looking on the inside than what any of us could have come up with back at Kimbo. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's got to be a cool feeling.
Yeah, because this company is about inspiring people to the outdoors, and if that's what gets somebody into the outdoors even more, then it compounds on the purpose of the company.
That's awesome. We could sit here and talk about this all day, but like Mark mentioned, there is a Facebook group over on Facebook if anyone uses that. So there's two different communities, one for owners. So if you own a Kimbo, you just kind of fill out the questionnaire with your Kimbo number. I happen to be number 213. I think you guys are up to like 400 now.
Yeah, 430 or something like that.
Yeah, so this community, now that you guys have ramped up production, is growing. So if you are a Kimbo owner, I'll leave a link down below where you guys can join that community. Or if you are really interested in learning more about these, I'll leave a link to the open group, which anyone can join. There's a lot of owners in that group too, which they share their own ideas and thought processes, their own build outs. And you can find out any more information too over on kimboliving.com, and also over on their Instagram too, some photos, and you can kind of keep up with the production schedule over there as well. So anything else you want to talk about when it comes to the Kimbo?
I liked staying in this last night. I mean, you said it was single digits. How cold did it get?
Yeah, I woke up at 5:30 this morning and it said the real feel was 1 degree. So it was single.
Being able to camp at 1 degree and having this little fireplace going and looking outside and seeing the snow in the morning. We saw horses come through the campground.
Yeah.
You can't buy this. You can only be equipped enough to experience it. It's just been awesome to stay in this camper and to see how Talon has fitted it out, and be able to be in this environment. It's really, really special. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I'm glad that you were able to come to Colorado, visit family. I was like, you need to use my Kimbo.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll take the van, I'll take something else. I was like, I would love for you to to experience this together, because we've only really camped together once or twice before with the Kimbo. So maybe next time you're here, maybe you'll have your own truck and your camper, and we can go do a little adventure. It'd be awesome. So if you guys have any more questions, you can drop them in the comments down below. I'll try to answer anything as best as possible. You may see Mark in the future a little bit more here in some future videos. And yeah, I'm excited to go out and camp some more with this awesome future space pod of a camper. So
thanks for watching, everybody.
yeah, that's all we got. If you're new here, consider clicking subscribe, and we'll talk to you in the next one.